Close your eyes and imagine this. You are standing in a room so massive that entire cities could fit inside it. The walls are gold, pure gold stretching up so high that the ceiling disappears into darkness even though lights burn everywhere. The air crackles with power, real power, the kind that makes your skin itch and your teeth hurt and your heart beat wrong in your chest. And in the center of this impossible room sits a corpse, a body so ancient that it should have turned to dust 10,000 years ago. Except this corpse is not dead. Not really, because even though its flesh is rotting and its organs have failed and its bones are visible through paper-thin skin, this body contains more power than anything else in the entire galaxy. This is the Emperor of Mankind. And what I am about to tell you about his power will absolutely destroy everything you thought you knew about Warhammer 40,000. Let me start with something that will make your brain hurt. The Emperor is currently a corpse sitting on a throne made of technology nobody understands anymore. He has been sitting there for 10,000 years. His body kept barely alive by machines that sacrifice 1,000 human souls every single day. Think about that number. 1,000 people, every day, for 10,000 years. That is 3.65 billion human beings consumed just to keep this one body functioning. An entire hive world's population fed into machines over the millennia. The largest sacrifice in human history, and it is still not enough. The throne is failing. The Emperor's body is dying by millimeters. And when it finally gives out, when that corpse finally crosses the line into true death, the entire Imperium of Man will collapse in a matter of hours. But here is what nobody tells you. Here is the secret that makes this even more terrifying. The Emperor sitting on that throne right now is so impossibly powerful that even in his rotting, barely alive state, even while his consciousness is scattered across the warp fighting an eternal war against the Chaos Gods, even while he can barely hold his own body together, he is still the single most powerful psyker in the galaxy. More powerful than any demon. More powerful than any alien god. More powerful than anything that has ever existed in the material universe. And this is him at his weakest. This is him dying. Imagine what he was like when he was actually alive. Let me take you back. Back before the throne. Back before the Imperium. Back to ancient Earth when humans were still trying to figure out how to not kill each other over scraps of irradiated wasteland. The year is approximately 30,000 BCE, though dates from this time are questionable at best. Somewhere in ancient Anatolia, what will one day become Turkey, a child is born. Except this is not a normal child. This boy is the result of something impossible. Thousands of human shamans, the most powerful psychers on ancient Earth, decided that humanity needed a protector. Someone strong enough to guide the species through the darkness ahead. So they performed a ritual, all of them at once. Thousands of shamans across the planet committed suicide in perfect synchronization. And in doing so, they forced their souls to merge in the warp, to combine into something that had never existed before, a Gestalt consciousness, a god made of human will and human souls and human desperation. And this consciousness reached back into the material universe and placed itself into the body of a baby boy. That baby was the Emperor. He has been alive for over 48,000 years. Think about that. This being has existed since before recorded history. Since before civilization, he has watched the rise and fall of every empire humanity has ever built. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Mongols, the ancient technological federations of the dark age of technology. All of it. He has seen all of it. And here is the terrifying part. For almost all of those 48,000 years, he was hiding, pretending to be normal, pretending to be just another human, moving through history in secret, manipulating events from the shadows, always working towards some grand design that only he understood. Why did he hide? Because even back then, Even when he was young and his powers were still developing, he understood something fundamental about his nature. He was not human anymore. He might wear a human body and speak human languages and pretend to have human emotions, but he was something else. Something that existed on a different level of reality. And he knew that if humanity discovered what he was too early, before they were ready, they would either worship him or try to destroy him. Either outcome would ruin his plans. So he waited. For 38,000 years he waited, occasionally revealing himself as prophets or warlords or scientists when history needed a push, but always disappearing again, always maintaining the deception. Let me tell you about the first time he revealed even a fraction of his true power. The Age of Strife. Humanity had reached the stars, built an empire that spanned the galaxy, created technology so advanced it might as well be magic. And then psychers started being born. Humans who could touch the warp, who could manipulate reality with their thoughts. At first, this seemed like the next step in evolution. Humanity ascending to something greater. But the warp was changing. Entities were forming in that other realm. The Chaos Gods were being born from humanity's own emotions and sins. And these gods looked at all those new psychers and saw opportunities. Doorways into the material universe. Demons started pouring through. Entire worlds consumed by warp storms. Billions dying as reality itself broke down. Human civilization collapsed in a matter of centuries. The Golden Age ending in fire and madness. And the Emperor watched this happen. Watched humanity tear itself apart. Watched the species he was supposed to protect fragment into isolated pockets of survivors who forgot they were ever one people. And then he decided enough was enough. Around the 29th millennium, he finally stepped out of the shadows. Not as a prophet or a guide, but as a conqueror. He called himself the Emperor of Mankind. No humility, no pretense. Just a declaration that he was taking control and anyone who resisted would be crushed. He started in the radioactive wastes of Terra, Earth, humanity's homeworld that had been reduced to a nightmare of warring techno-barbarians and mutant hordes. There were dozens of warlords claiming to rule various territories. Men with armies numbering in the millions. Men who had spent centuries building power bases and defensive positions and military forces. The Emperor destroyed them all in less than a century. Not through superior numbers. Terra was mostly dead. Not through better technology. The warlords had access to ancient weapons from the Dark Age. He won through sheer personal power. There are records of battles where the Emperor stood alone on a battlefield facing armies of 100,000 warriors and he won. Not through tactics or strategy. He just killed them. All of them. His psychic power so overwhelming that he could make soldiers drop dead with a thought. Could make tanks explode by looking at them. Could make entire battalions throw down their weapons and worship him on the spot because his presence was so intense that it overrode their ability to resist. One warlord, a tyrant named Narthan Dumay who ruled from the Caucasus, is recorded to have said moments before the Emperor killed him, "You are not a man. You are a storm given flesh. How does anyone fight a storm?" The Emperor's response was to unmake him, not kill. Unmake. Dumay ceased to exist. His body dissolved into particles. His soul scattered. His name erased from every record his faction had kept. There was a man and then there was not. And nobody who served Dumay could even remember his name afterward. That is the level of power we are talking about. Reality manipulation so complete that existence itself bends to his will. Once Terra was united, the Emperor began the Great Crusade, the reconquest of the galaxy, and he did not do this alone. He created sons, 20 genetically engineered demigods called primarchs, each one a reflection of a different aspect of his own nature: strength, intelligence, compassion, fury. devotion. He took his own genetic material and his own psychic essence and split it into 20 parts. Then he grew those parts into beings who were less powerful than him, but still far beyond anything else in the galaxy. The Chaos Gods noticed. They saw what the Emperor was creating and they were terrified. Because the Primarchs were not just generals or commanders. They were weapons designed specifically to fight the warp. The Emperor had studied the Chaos Gods for millennia, understood their weaknesses, and he was building an army that could finally destroy them permanently. So chaos struck first. They opened a rift in reality, reached into the Emperor's laboratory, and scattered the infant Primarchs across the galaxy, stealing them before they could be trained or prepared or taught how to use their powers properly. This should have ended the Emperor's plans, should have broken him, except he barely paused. He found each one, traveled to distant worlds, and located his sons who had been raised by aliens or barbarians or monsters. And when he found them, he did something that still terrifies me when I think about it. He convinced them to follow him. Not through mind control, though he certainly could have done that. Not through force, though he was powerful enough to compel their obedience. He convinced them through sheer charisma, through being so utterly certain of his vision and his purpose that even beings as powerful as Primarchs, creatures who had conquered entire planets by themselves, looked at him and thought, "Yes, I will follow this man to the edge of the universe." 18 of them joined him. Well, 20 originally, but we do not talk about the 2nd and 11th Primarchs. Their existence has been erased so thoroughly that even their brother Primarchs do not remember them. Whatever they did or became was so terrible that the Emperor removed them from history itself, from memory, from the warp, from every level of reality. That is power beyond comprehension. The ability to make something not just dead, but to make it so that it never existed at all. The Great Crusade lasted for 200 years. In that time, the Emperor and his Primarchs and the Space Marine legions they commanded reconquered thousands of worlds, brought millions of human civilizations back into the fold, destroyed alien empires that had existed for eons, the Orc Empire of Ulanor, the cybernetic horrors of the Rangdan Xenocides, countless others, and the Emperor was always at the front, not in a command center giving orders. He was on the battlefield personally, fighting, killing, showing his sons what true power looked like. There are accounts of him fighting an orc war boss called Urlak Urg during the Eleanor Crusade. This was an orc the size of a building, a creature whose power was so immense that reality literally bent around him. Orcs grow stronger as they win more battles, and Urlak had never lost. His Wa'ak energy was so concentrated that guns would jam in his presence and tanks would explode and warriors would feel their courage drain away just standing near him. He had conquered hundreds of worlds, commanded billions of orcs, was on the verge of creating an empire that might have swept across the galaxy. The Emperor killed him in single combat. The fight lasted less than a minute. Urlak swung a power claw that could tear through starship hulls. The Emperor dodged. Urlak unleashed psychic power that had previously leveled mountains. The Emperor absorbed it, and then the Emperor struck back. He burned Urlak from the inside out, not with fire, with pure psychic energy. The orc's body lit up like a lantern, golden light pouring from his eyes and mouth and wounds. And then he fell, and every orc in the system felt it, felt their god die. And they broke. Billions of warriors fleeing or going catatonic because the psychic shockwave of Urlak's death hit them like a physical blow. But that is not even the most impressive display of the Emperor's power. Let me tell you about Magnus the Red, one of the Primarchs, the Emperor's most psychically gifted son. Magnus was a being of incredible power himself. He could shatter mountains with his thoughts, could read minds from across solar systems, could manipulate time and space. He was so powerful that even the Chaos Gods noticed him and tried to claim him as their own. Magnus made a mistake. In his arrogance, he delved too deeply into the warp, seeking knowledge the Emperor had forbidden. And when he discovered that his brother Horus was falling to chaos, that the greatest of the Primarchs was being corrupted, Magnus tried to warn the Emperor. But the Emperor was working on something secret, a project in the dungeons beneath the Imperial Palace. A webway, a tunnel through reality that would allow humanity to travel without using the warp, without feeding the Chaos Gods with their presence. This was the Emperor's master plan, the weapon that would finally free humanity from chaos forever. Magnus' warning came in the form of a psychic message, and Magnus put so much power into it that he tore through the psychic wards the Emperor had placed around his project, shattered defenses that had taken decades to build, ripped a hole in reality directly into the webway tunnel, and demons poured through, trillions of them, an infinite army spilling into the Imperial Palace, into the heart of Terra itself. The Emperor's response is the single greatest display of psychic power ever recorded. He was on a ship in orbit at the time. The moment Magnus' message tore through his wards, the Emperor teleported. Not using technology, using his mind. He crossed the distance from orbital space to the deepest dungeon of the palace instantaneously, and he arrived to find demons flooding through the breach. Greater demons, demon princes, horrors beyond counting, entities that could destroy planets given enough time. And the Emperor simply closed the door. He stood at the breach alone, and he pushed back against the infinite armies of the warp. For hours, he held the line by himself. No weapons, no armor, just his psychic might against the entire warp. Demons tried to break through. He unmade them. Chaos Gods themselves reached through the breach trying to pull him into the warp. He burned their manifestations away. Reality was breaking down around him. The laws of physics screaming as two realms tried to occupy the same space. And he held firm. For 10 hours straight, the Emperor of Mankind fought the entire warp to a standstill. When reinforcements finally arrived, when his custodian guard reached his position, they found him still standing at the breach, his body wreathed in golden flames, his eyes burning so brightly that even they, warriors engineered to serve a demigod, could not look directly at him. And the breach was sealed. Not permanently, the damage was too severe for that, but contained, pushed back to the point where it could be held by conventional forces while he planned a permanent solution. But this fight cost him. The Webway project was destroyed, humanity's chance to escape the warp gone. And worse, the Emperor realized that he could not leave Terra anymore, could not continue the Great Crusade. Because if he was not present to hold the Webway breach closed, if he was not actively pushing back against the demons every moment of every day, they would break through and Terra would fall. So he made the hardest decision of his long existence. He handed control of the Great Crusade to Horus, his favorite son, the most brilliant of the Primarchs. And he returned to Terra, returned to the breach, and he has been holding it closed ever since. For 10,000 years. Even now, as a corpse on a throne, a massive portion of his consciousness and power is devoted to keeping that door shut, to fighting an endless war in the warp against enemies that never tire and never stop and never truly die. The Horus heresy happened next. The worst betrayal imaginable. Horus fell to chaos completely. Convinced by the Chaos Gods that the Emperor was building a divine empire where he would rule as a god and the Primarchs would be discarded once they were no longer useful. Whether this was true or not is irrelevant. Horus believed it, and he convinced 9 other Primarchs to join him. Half the Imperium's military might turn traitor overnight. The war that followed nearly destroyed everything. Brother fought brother. Entire sectors burned. Billions died. and the Emperor could not fully engage in the war because he was holding the webway breach closed. He could only act through proxies, through the loyal Primarchs, through the desperate defense of Terra as the traitor legions finally reached humanity's homeworld. The siege of Terra lasted for months, 9 traitor legions throwing themselves against the defenses. Demons and corrupted space marines and traitor guard in numbers that blackened the sky. The Imperial Palace was breached. Custodians died by the thousands defending their master. And still the Emperor could not leave his post, could not abandon the webway breach even as his home burned around him. Horus finally reached the throne room, but even corrupted by all 4 Chaos Gods, even wielding power that made him nearly a god himself, Horus knew he could not defeat the Emperor in a straight fight. So he did something cruel. He captured Sanguinius, another Primarch, one of the most beloved of the Emperor's sons, and he murdered him, broke his body and threw it at the Emperor's feet. The Emperor found them there, Horus standing over Sanguinius's corpse, and Horus smiled, because he thought he understood, thought the Emperor would be too emotional to fight properly, too grieved by the loss of his favored son. But he was wrong. The Emperor looked at Sanguinius's body, looked at Horus, and he attacked with the full force of his psychic might. No holding back, no restraint, no mercy. The battle between the Emperor and Horus lasted seconds. In those seconds, they fought across multiple dimensions simultaneously. In the material universe, their bodies clashed with weapons that could shatter planets. In the warp, their souls battled as titans of psychic energy. They tore through alternate timelines, through different realities. The fight was so intense that it created echoes that are still felt 10,000 years later. Psychers sometimes catch glimpses of it in their visions, see 2 figures of light and dark locked in eternal combat. Horus was powerful, empowered by all 4 Chaos Gods, but he was still just a Primarch, still just a fraction of what the Emperor was. The Emperor tore through his defenses, burned away the chaos corruption, reached into Horus's soul and tried to find anything worth saving. Tried to see if his favorite son still existed somewhere beneath the corruption. For just a moment, Horus's eyes cleared. The chaos influence flickered, and Horus saw what he had become, saw what he had done, and he begged his father to kill him, to end it before the Chaos Gods reasserted control. And the Emperor granted that mercy. He struck with all his power, not to defeat Horus, to obliterate him, to burn his soul so thoroughly that even the Chaos Gods could not resurrect him, to ensure that his favorite son would finally be free from their influence, even if that freedom only came through complete annihilation. Horus died, but the Emperor was mortally wounded. Horus had struck him during their battle, had torn a wound in the Emperor's body that even his regenerative abilities could not heal. His sons found him there in the throne room, his body broken, his power fading, and he gave them one final command: place me on the golden throne. Do not let me die. They did. They carried his shattered body to the throne, the same device that had been holding the webway breach closed. They connected him to its systems, fed it his genetic material and his psychic essence. And they began the sacrifices, 1,000 psychers every day, their souls consumed to keep the Emperor's body functioning, to give him enough power to hold the Astronomicon, the psychic lighthouse that allows humanity to navigate the warp, to keep the webway breach sealed, to maintain the Imperium through sheer force of will. And here is what terrifies me most. Even as a corpse, even scattered across multiple dimensions, even while fighting the Chaos Gods and holding the breach closed and maintaining the Astronomicon, the Emperor is still conscious, still aware, still manipulating events across the Imperium. There are records of living saints appearing on battlefields, warriors surrounded by golden light who perform impossible miracles. The Emperor manifesting through particularly faithful individuals. There are records of ships lost in the warp being guided back to reality by a golden figure. The Emperor reaching into the Imperium to save his people. There are records of demons being banished by nothing but a feeling of divine presence. The Emperor striking at chaos from his throne. He is becoming a god, not in the way he intended, not as a beacon of reason and science, but as a genuine divine entity. Humanity's worship over 10,000 years has been feeding him, making him stronger in the warp even as his body weakens. The Chaos Gods fear this, fear what he is becoming, because if the Emperor fully ascends, if he becomes a true warp god, he might finally have the power to destroy them, to end their existence and free humanity from their influence forever. But there is a cost. If the Emperor dies, if his body finally fails completely, the Astronomicon will go dark. The webway breach will explode open. Terra will be consumed by demons in minutes. The Imperium will fragment as worlds lose the ability to navigate the warp. Humanity will collapse back into the Age of Strife. Everything the Emperor has built over 10,000 years will end, unless he ascends properly, unless the moment of his death is also the moment of his apotheosis, when he becomes something beyond even what he was, a god powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Some within the Imperium believe this is his plan, that he is waiting for the perfect moment, gathering power, preparing for a transformation that will shake the galaxy. Others believe he is simply too stubborn to die, that his will alone is keeping him functioning, that he refuses to fail humanity even as his body rots away beneath him. I have told you about his physical power, his psychic might, his accomplishments, but let me tell you what truly makes the Emperor of Mankind the most powerful being in the galaxy. It is not his ability to unmake reality. It is not his 48,000 years of accumulated knowledge. It is not even his apotheosis into godhood. It is his absolute conviction. The Emperor has never doubted, never wavered, never questioned whether his path was correct. For 48,000 years he has pursued a single goal, the survival and elevation of the human species. Everything he has done, every manipulation, every betrayal, every sacrifice has been in service of that goal. The deaths of billions do not move him. The suffering of his people does not dissuade him. The hatred of his sons does not hurt him. He is beyond such considerations. He looks at the galaxy and sees only the equation, only the calculation of what must be done to ensure humanity endures. This makes him terrible. This makes him cruel. He created the Primarchs knowing they would suffer, knowing they would be taken from him. He designed the Space Marines knowing they would be traumatized by the process of their creation. He sacrificed entire worlds during the Great Crusade when compliance seemed too costly. He erased 2 of his own sons from existence when they failed to meet his standards. He has consumed 3.65 billion human souls over 10,000 years to maintain his existence. And he has never regretted any of it, because in his mind all of it was necessary. All of it served the greater purpose. The Emperor of Mankind is not a hero. He is not a villain. He is something far more frightening. He is inevitability, the physical manifestation of humanity's collective will to survive at any cost, no matter how high that cost becomes. And he is dying. His throne is failing. The mechanisms that keep him alive breaking down after 10,000 years of constant use. The tech priests do not fully understand how it works, cannot repair it properly, can only perform maintenance rituals and pray that the machine spirits accept their offerings. Every century the power requirements increase. Every millennium requires more sacrifices. They are currently taking 1,000 psychers per day. Some estimates suggest that within the next 1,000 years, that number will need to increase to 5,000, then 10,000, then more, until there are not enough psychers in the Imperium to feed the throne's hunger. What happens then? Does the Emperor finally die? Does he ascend? Does he return as something new? Nobody knows. Not even the Emperor himself can say for certain, because even he cannot see past that moment. His precognition, his ability to perceive possible futures, goes dark at the moment of the throne's failure. The future beyond that point is blank, hidden, as if reality itself has not yet decided what comes next. This is the Emperor of mankind, a being of such power that he holds an empire of 1,000,000 worlds together through sheer force of will, a creature so ancient that he remembers the birth of civilization, a warrior who has never lost a battle, a psyker who fights the gods themselves to a standstill, a father who loves his children enough to destroy them when they threaten his vision, a tyrant who demands absolute obedience from every human in the galaxy, a corpse that refuses to die, a god who rejects godhood even as he ascends to it. He is humanity's greatest protector and its cruelest master. He is the reason the Imperium survives and the reason it suffers. He is everything we should aspire to be and everything we should fear becoming. And when he finally dies or ascends or transforms into whatever comes next, the galaxy will never be the same. The Emperor protects. That is what they say throughout the Imperium. The Emperor protects. And it is true. He does protect. But protection has a price. And humanity has been paying that price for 10,000 years in blood and souls and suffering beyond measure. And we will continue paying it for as long as the corpse on the throne continues to draw breath. For as long as the golden light continues to burn in the void. For as long as humanity needs a monster strong enough to fight the monsters that would devour us all. That is the unbelievable truth about the Emperor's power. Not that he is strong. Not that he is ancient, but that he is necessary, that humanity cannot survive without him, that we have built our entire civilization around this one being, made ourselves dependent on a corpse, tied our fate to something that is slowly dying and taking us with it. And maybe that was his plan all along. Maybe the Emperor understood from the beginning that humanity needed to be united through worship, through fear, through absolute dependence on a single figure. Maybe he knew that freedom would destroy us, that we would tear ourselves apart without a master to serve. Maybe everything, the throne, the suffering, the endless sacrifices, maybe all of it is necessary. Maybe this is the only way humanity survives in a galaxy that wants nothing more than to consume us. Or maybe he made a mistake. Maybe the Emperor's conviction blinded him. Maybe there was a better path that he could not see because he was too certain of his own correctness. Maybe we are all paying for the arrogance of one incredibly powerful being who decided he knew what was best for the entire species. We will never know, because the Emperor cannot speak anymore, cannot explain his reasoning, cannot tell us if this was always the plan or if he is desperately improvising while his body fails. All we can do is watch the throne and wait. Wait for the moment when everything changes. When the corpse finally dies or the god finally ascends. When 10,000 years of suffering either leads to salvation or damnation. That is the Emperor of mankind. That is his power. And that is the nightmare we all live in. Hoping that the monster protecting us is stronger than the monsters trying to devour us. Praying that the corpse keeps breathing for one more day, sacrificing everything to maintain a system that grinds human lives into fuel for a war that never ends. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And at the center of that war, on a throne of gold and machinery and suffering, sits a corpse that was once a man who became a god who became a corpse that might become something entirely new. And every human being in the galaxy depends on what happens next, whether we want to or not.